What you're looking at here is a map showing the land loss of Palestine to Israel. Now, there's an organization called the Ayn Rand Institute. If you guys don't know who Ayn Rand is, I have spoken about her several times in many of my videos. She basically had this philosophy called objectivism, which was basically a metaphysical argument that you can know objective reality using your own sense of reasoning. And basically, she was for limited government. She was for self-esteem. She had a philosophy. Objectivism was also about rational selfishness, right? You're not supposed to be a sacrificial animal. She basically rejected altruism. But the Ayn Rand Institute has decided to sit up and lie about the land loss of the Palestinians to Israel. Um, so I'm going to start out by showing this clip, and then I'm going to give my commentary as it is appropriate.
Dishonest. I think it's designed to fool people and create a narrative that is far from the truth. So we should go panel by panel through this map, and it's good to start with this first panel. But I think it's important to say, to answer your question, did Israel steal the land? The answer is no. It did not steal the land. And I think there's more to be said about the issue of, is there such a thing as Palestinian land? Is there such a thing as Jewish land? And I think the answer to that is also no.
Okay, so according to him, there is no such thing as Israel or Palestinian land. Okay, so this is an article from NBC News. It says Israel adopts a divisive law that declares only Jews have the right of self-determination. So Israel passed a law, and this was back in 2018, to declare that only Jews have the right of self-determination in the country, something members of the Arab minority call racist and verging on apartheid. The nation state backed by the right-wing government passed by a vote of 62 to 55 and 2 abstentions in the 120-member parliament after months of political argument. Some Arab lawmakers shouted and ripped up papers after the vote. This is a defining moment in the annals of Zionism and the history of the state of Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the Knesset after the vote. Largely symbolic, the law was enacted just after the 60th anniversary of the birth of the State of Israel. It stipulates that Israel is the historic homeland of the Jewish people, and they have an exclusive right to national self-determination in it. Now, this person just sat up here and said that there is no such thing as Jewish or Palestinian land, right? According to Netanyahu and according to the Israeli parliament, Israel is a Jewish. They refer to Israel as a Jewish state, right? It is your citizenship is based on your ethnicity. If you are Jewish, then you get automatic citizenship. But that really only applies to white Jews, because if you are a black Jew, then you don't get citizenship. So it's based on race, and this is an apartheid state. So what he said about there's no such thing as Jewish land or Palestinian land is absolute nonsense. There is no such thing as Palestinian land, which I'm going to address because basically Palestinians don't have any human rights. Now let's go back to this video.
Land that's owned by individuals. And then you can ask, what is their heritage? What is their background? What is their religion? What kind of beliefs do they have? But there is no land that's owned by a collective.
Okay, so another thing about Ayn Rand was against collectivism. She didn't believe in racism because the smallest minority is individuals. So she was a big proponent of individual rights. However, she did seem to contradict herself when it came to certain groups, because what she did is she arbitrarily deemed some groups to be savages, which is against her other argument that there is no such thing as collectivism. There's only individuals. So how do you collectively deem some groups to be savages? So the two groups that she deemed to be savages were the Palestinians and the Native Americans. So because she believed that all human beings did not have human rights. She believed that human rights were um, exclusive to civilized human beings. So if you were a savage, she could arbitrarily deem you as a savage, and therefore you weren't entitled to human rights.
But there is no land that's owned by a collective. And
Okay, so he said there is no such thing as collective land. Now, we're going to get into that. We're going to address and we're going to debunk his claim of debunking this narrative that there's no such thing as Israel or Palestinian land.
Rajab family is slowly but surely being forced from the cluster of apartment buildings which are their ancestral family home. Israeli settlers arrived on July 25th, broke into 3 of the apartments and moved in. Within hours, the army turned the site into a closed military zone, in effect providing protection to the settlers and restricting the Abu Rajab's access to their own home. The family say they've also been harassed by the settlers, including verbal abuse, rocks and sewage thrown at them.
Now, I don't have time to get into the details of it, but the Palestinians are routinely attacked by the Israeli settlers. They violently attack them. They have weapons. They have machine guns, right? Semi-automatic weapons, and they routinely harass the Palestinians. The Palestinians don't have any weapons. The only defense force for the Palestinians is basically Hamas, which is deemed a terrorist organization. So these Palestinians are completely vulnerable to the Israeli settlers.
Hatem Abu Rajab has lost hope anyone will help his family.
We've waited 5 years for a process. Now we jumped the gun a little bit. We pushed it ahead. We're tired of waiting around, and especially with certain actions that have happened in the last few weeks showing a lack of sovereignty, of Jewish sovereignty. We, what you would call the settlers, we think we're the Jewish community of Hebron, have pushed forward and have gone back to a building that we rightfully own.
Okay, so he talked about the right to Israeli sovereignty. Basically, the Israelis have the exclusive right to self-determination. So they were waiting for a court, Israeli court, not a Palestinian court, to declare that this land belonged to Israel, even though these Palestinians had already lived there, right? The court is biased in favor of the Israelis or the Jewish settlers because a lot of these people immigrated from America to Israel. So they were waiting for the court. It was a 5-year battle. So they decided to take the law into their own hands and basically just go in there and evict these people from their homes with the help of the Israeli military, the IDF. This happens routinely. This is something they go around stealing land. And so this person who was making this video on the Ayn Rand Institute channel basically was saying that there's no such thing as Israeli or Palestinian land. And his argument was basically that they were talking about land that wasn't inhabited. We're not talking about the land that was, uninhabitable by human beings, that was made habitable by Israel. We're talking about Israel physically going in and bombing people's homes and seizing their homes at gunpoint.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. Thank God, still alive.
Yeah. You're a difficult man to get hold of.
Yeah, generally don't interview, but given the circumstances and the bad press that's out there, I decided that we need to do some damage control.
Jacob Fauci is an American Israeli. He became infamous after Mona confronted him and the video went viral.
Jacob, you know this is not your house.
Yes, but if I go, you don't go back. So what's the problem? Why are you yelling at me? I didn't do this.
You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
No one is allowed to steal it, يا عمي.
He's been living in an additional part of Mona's house for over 10 years. after being recruited by a US-based company called Nahalat Shimon International, which owns the property under Israeli law. How did you end up here?
He so they own the property according to Israeli law because the Israeli government has to give permits to the Palestinians to build land, and even if they have permits, then they don't even recognize it. These Israelis can come in and still take their land and say that these Palestinians are illegitimate, and there's basically nothing they can do about it. So this is a person who came from America. He came from New York. He migrated to Israel and basically stole this woman's home.
It's a long story. Basically, I needed to move from where I was, and my friend was very, very active in this neighborhood. And he said, you can stay here for the time being.
Do you pay rent?
I have an arrangement with the owners of the house. I don't want to get into personal arrangements and rents and things, but yes, I'm a tenant here. I'm not...
So he doesn't want to answer the question, and the answer is no, he doesn't pay rent. What they're trying to do is displace the Palestinians. This is something that happened in America, right? We had Native Americans that had moved out west, or and then America recruited European immigrants to come to America because they were trying to displace the Native Americans. So they didn't want all of these Native Americans, spread out in the western part of the country. So what they did is they brought in these European settlers and recruited them so that they could take those settlements over. They gave them free land. So they intentionally were trying to drive the Native Americans out. And this is the same thing that is going on in Israel.
I have no ownership over this property.
You're from Brooklyn?
No, I'm from New York, from Long Island.
From New York. What right do you have to live here?
The right I have is that the owner of the house wants me to live here, and he wants there to be Jews living in this house, and he wants to... And I got chosen for whatever reason.
So he's talking about the owner according to Israeli law. He's not talking about the rightful possessor of that land, the person who was actually living there. They don't recognize the rights of the Palestinians. Palestinians have no human rights, and I'm going to be addressing that.
And it ended up being me.
So why do you live here?
Because I live here, because it's important, and because not too many people want to live here, and it's important to strengthen this neighborhood, to make sure that this neighborhood is not lost in any future peace deal.
So he said that the reason that he's there is to make sure that this land is not lost in future peace deals. This is ethnic cleansing. They're trying to get Jewish settlers to migrate to Israel to displace the Palestinians because they're trying to drive them out. And once they are driven out, once they are homeless, and once they leave that area to Jordan or Syria, wherever the hell they're supposed to go to, then they won't have a right to return. Then they're going to make that entire region exclusively Jewish. Israel is a Jewish state, and only Israel has the exclusive right to self-determination.
This is very hard moments for the owners of this building to see their house get bombed from Israeli warplanes. A very hard moment right now. We are here in the scene, reporting.
So this is the Israeli government bombing the homes of Palestinian civilians. This happens routinely. Fortunately, they weren't in the homes, but they don't care. Even if you are in the home, they don't have any problem bombing homes with people still inside. So if you read the the subtext, it's basically saying that we're just civilians. But the problem with Israel is they don't see these people as civilians. They think that everyone who is Palestinian is Hamas.
انا وابويا واخواتي الاربعه ونسواننا واولادنا.
طيب ايش اللي صار؟ تحكي لنا ايش اللي صار قبل هذه القصه؟ اتصلوا عليكم؟
ما اتصلوش علينا، ما بلغوناش اليوم.
So nothing happened before that airstrike. These people did absolutely nothing. They were given no warning. The only warning probably was given to the Israeli settlers who were there so that they could evacuate the area because of course they care about those Jewish settlers, but they don't give a damn about the Palestinians. So the only warning that the Palestinians received came from the Israeli settlers.
كم من شخص ساكن هنا؟
حوالي 15 واحد، 4 طوابق.
There were 15 people in the building. Now they're all being displaced. Now they are transient.
لسه بدنا الطبقين الجداد هذول عشان نجوز اخر اخوه من الاثنين تاعون.
This is the IDF forcing these Palestinians to evacuate their homes so that they can make way for Israeli settlers. So the Israeli court ruled in favor of the Israeli settlers, even though that family had lived there for 70 years. They don't respect private property rights. This is something that Ayn Rand held to be an important right to individual liberty. But the Palestinians don't have any rights because they're not considered human beings. They're considered savages.
كانت عملية بمساعدة الجيش والشرطة، عملية إجرامية، نكبة ثالثة للفلسطينيين.
يا بلي عملك خبلا المين تخش في تبال بتصقك فلسطين بخينا في يا بلي عملك خبلا موليا من شمال كل.
So this was someone's home, right? And the Israeli military, these soldiers just came in and stole someone's home, and then they turned it into their own private gym. By the way, they routinely steal from the Palestinians. They steal jewelry, they steal vehicles. They just take whatever they want because they have the exclusive right to self-determination. They have the weapons. These Palestinians are completely vulnerable to the Israeli military. All right, now let's go back to this video from the Ayn Rand Institute.
That's one of the pieces of context that this kind of map drops. And the other thing to say as just set up for this map in general is that this map is an excellent example of a fallacy that Ayn Rand identified called the fallacy of dropping context. So knowledge is not atomic. Knowledge is a network. Knowledge is something that's integrated. And if you rip something out of context, we know this from when people rip quotes out of context. That happens all the time. But if you rip knowledge out of context, it is not useful. You can't understand what you're being told. And it's usually used by people who are trying to lie to you or deceive you or trick you in some way. And I think this map is an excellent case study of that fallacy.
Okay, so he's saying that the context has been removed, that just looking at the map in and of itself is not, it's not giving you the full picture. So let's get into the context. Let's talk about what Ayn Rand thought of the Palestinians.
I'd like to know your opinion on the United States' foreign policy and what is happening in the Middle East right now.
But if you mean whose side should one be on, Israel or the Arabs, I would certainly say Israel, because think because it's the advanced, technological, civilized country amidst a group of almost totally primitive savages who have not changed for years and who are racist and who resent Israel because it's bringing industry and intelligence and modern technology into their stagnation.
Okay, so as I previously stated, Ayn Rand did not believe that all human beings were entitled to human rights. She believed that human rights were exclusive to civilized human beings because rights are based on a social contract. So she doesn't believe that primitive people could honor a social contract. Um, and she was an intellectual elite. So she basically prioritized those who were socially and technologically advanced. So because Palestine is primitive because they don't have technology, they are deemed savages. It has nothing to do with their morals. It has nothing to do with how they treat one another. The fact that they're not as advanced as Israel means that they are savages and they're not entitled to human rights. Now, the other component to this is the fact that Palestine is not a recognized state. So until Palestine is recognized as a state, a nation state, then the Palestinians are not entitled to human rights. Now, basically, Israel jumped the gun by getting recognized as a state before Palestine, and they did this with the help of Great Britain and the United States. So because Palestine is not a recognized state and because they don't have advanced technology, they are deemed savages. So this is the context that is missing from the entire discussion. They don't consider Palestinians to be human beings. They don't respect their property rights. They don't respect their right to life. They have no problem indiscriminately bombing them, stealing their property, and basically the media is not supposed to report it because if you are in Israel, even if you are Jewish and you report on this, you can be jailed. And the Palestinians have even fewer rights than the Israelis. If you are a Palestinian trying to resist your own oppression, you can be thrown in prison without a hearing. Some of these people have been rotting in prison for years without any type of trial. So, and they are beaten, they are abused, they are malnourished, all because they resist the occupation of the Israelis. So everything that the Ayn Rand Institute said about this is a complete lie. They call themselves trying to debunk the map showing the land loss of Palestine to Israel. And I think they did a pretty poor job. But looking from the comments section, it doesn't seem that many people actually have any type of discernment to know and to be able to recognize when they're being told lies, because a lot of people actually agree with this. But no, the Ayn Rand Institute is lying, and Ayn Rand had the audacity to say that the Palestinians are the ones who are racist. No, it's the Israelis who are racist. Israel is basically a system of white supremacy. They don't even recognize Black Jews as being legitimate citizens, even though citizenship is supposed to be based on a Jewish identity. So it only matters if you are a white Jew. If you are a Black Jew, then you don't have any rights. And Palestinians also don't have rights. When they say that Israel has the exclusive right to self-determination, what they're really saying is that the white Jews have the exclusive right to self-determination. Anyone else is not a human being. Anyone else is not entitled to human rights. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.